Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about how to cultivate a winning mentality to help improve your win rate in League of Legends. As always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check out the stream every night on YouTube starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, usually going till about 3 or 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. We'd love to have you. I try to talk as much as I can with the chat while also explaining what's going on in the games. And we do tons and tons of guides like this that I'm going to start updating every single day, so come by, check that out. Everything from fresh patch notes and tier lists for each role to topical guides like this. So how to win is what this one's all about. And then we have best one tricks, how to micro better, how to macro better, does luck exist in League of Legends, what is toxicity, how to avoid it, what is dodging, when should you dodge, and just tons and tons of other topical videos. So come by, check all that out. If you like to sponsor a specific video, if you want me to do an in-depth guide on the champion of your choice or an in-depth guide on a topic that you'd really like to learn more about, then just email me, let me know. It's just $30 if you're not a channel member, and it's $25 if you are a channel member. So go by, check all the rest of that out. We have dozens and dozens of guys on the channel. Okay, let's start off with a core concept that is really difficult for a lot of people to accept, I think, in League of Legends, and that is that winning is a process, not a result. So what I mean by that is winning is all about learning and thinking about how to improve, not necessarily what your win rate is at a given moment. It's important to look at your win rate and reflect and think, okay, I've got a lot of games on this champ, I'm only 50%, you know, this other champ that I'm like 70% on and have like an okay amount of games, maybe I could shift over to them, right? Maybe the meta is working against this, you know, popular champion that I play or whatever. So it's important to look at that, and we'll talk about statistical reasoning in a second. But what I mean is you need to be thinking about how can I improve all the time. You know, you don't need to just take this loss as just completely unwinnable, right? Say, okay, well, that game was unwinnable because my top laner was 0-10 and, you know, my mid laner was 0-5, so it's not even worth thinking about that game because my teammates were terrible, right? You always want to go back and be thinking, okay, we probably were going to lose that game no matter what, but what could I have done to improve our percentages, right? So that's another thing that I talk about on here is maybe we were only 10% favored, but if I could have set us up to maybe defend that fourth dragon better or defend the Baron better or catch out this person who is isolated and split pushing, if we could have gotten that shutdown gold, you know, maybe that could have turned the game around. So just don't think about, you know, was the game actually winnable or not. The better question is, how could I have improved my chances to win that game? Because even if you can figure out how to go from like a 10% chance to a 30% chance to get your team back in the game and like have some prayer of winning it, even if you lose, that's going to come in handy down the line when it's a much closer game, when maybe it's like 50-50 or 60-40, and you're able to do those same types of techniques and then overall win the game. So you don't just want to focus on individual wins and individual losses. You need to focus on what can I learn that I can apply to future games. And that's really the winning mentality, right? So it's difficult to improve if you don't know how. And that's the biggest thing, is it's very hard to understand what you're supposed to be doing if you're not sort of self-aware and reflective, right? If you just, you know, once again, brush off those losses, or even if you dominate in a win and you think, well, I did everything correctly because I was 10-0 and we won this game, you're not going to learn anything, which means you're not going to win more games down the line. If you're not constantly, you know, it doesn't have to be something monumental, like completely learn a new champion or completely learn this concept you never thought of before. It could just be, okay, in this one specific situation, I understand I should not have tried to clear that control ward, or I understand that I should not have engaged when my top laner's TP was down and they weren't here, or just something like that, right? So just always look at stuff that you could have done differently to improve the outcome of the game. Now, part of this is I like to think, especially after I die on a play, while you're just, you know, gray in the fountain and just soaking it in, just thinking, okay, what could have gone differently there? Could I have positioned differently in that fight? Could I have used my cooldowns in a different way? Maybe I CC'd one target and maybe I should have CC'd a more important target, right? Could I have just not gone in on that play, right? If it was a bad play to go into, you know, if your jungler is wanting to dive this tower bottom and you go along with it and you don't know where their mid laner is or their jungler is and they collapsed and killed you, maybe the correct play was just don't do that, right? Even if your jungler goes in and dies by himself, that's better than both of you dying a lot of the time. So sometimes it's figuring out what not to do. in some cases, but just always reflect, especially after deaths, and then just watch your own replays if possible. Just download the replay, especially if there was something you didn't really understand, like how was that champion that powerful, or how did we lose that team fight? I thought we were really favored. Just go back and watch those if you can, and then try to study one tricks or high-low players that play your champion, and just think, what are they doing, right? Like, why did they build this in this situation? Why did they react this way in this situation? So you don't have to spend hours and hours studying, the film, but I think that, if you're really serious about winning, just maybe watch one game. You can even fast forward it, or just watch, on YouTube, take it up to 1.5 or 2x speed, or just watch the laning phase, or watch the team fighting, moments, or whatever you want to learn the most about. Just try to study and reflect on that a little bit. Be humble, but critically examine the meta. And what I mean by this is understand that a lot of higher elo players are going to be better than you, and that is good because that gives you an opportunity to learn from them. You can see the stuff they're doing if you're critically examining it and say, okay, I understand why he did that. He did not engage here because he didn't know where the jungler was, and I was thinking in my mind, and that's good to think while you're watching it, what would I be doing here? And then if they do something different than what you would have done in that situation, then go back and think, why did they do that differently? Maybe you would have engaged on something, but they decide not to because they don't know where the jungler is and they think it's too risky to do that. Or maybe they took a really high percentage engage and you thought it was too risky, but they thought it was a really good idea because they understood the power spikes better, right? They understood that their ADC was strong enough to win that fight. So just be humble, understand that people at higher elo are probably going to be better than you on certain champs. Look to learn from them. But then also critically examine the meta to some extent. So understand also that most people, like most high elo people and all these analysts, they have the meta solved, right? I'd say like 80% of the meta is solved. They understand what are the good champions, what are the appropriate builds on those champions, and if there's a lot of statistics to back that up, you got to accept they're probably right. I may not understand it, I may not appreciate it, but they're probably right. So, an example, and we talked about this on stream a couple of days ago, and I use Lolalytics over here on the side. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but they offer a lot of just really good statistical analysis of different things. But a great example of this was Senna, right? And I was talking with somebody in the chat, and we were looking at win rates on items here, and we noticed that Ginsu's is a really high win rate on AD Senna, and we were theory crafting and saying, okay, but attack speed's really bad on her, and so like, why are people doing this? And I watched a video, and I still haven't found great evidence for this, but that's what makes this a good example, is that it's, people pick this item 5 times more than any other secondary item, and it has, a really, really high win rate. And so there has to be something there, right? So just instead of brushing this off and just saying, oh, this is stupid, you should never do this, just think, okay, well, what's behind that? Why are they doing that? I want to try to understand that more, right? I want to go watch some videos on that, watch some gameplay, watch some guides, and figure out what's up with that. So there's a lot, so that's what I'm saying, there's a lot of statistical evidence here, a lot of statistical reasoning you can do to say, hey, something's going on there because it's really good. Now, some stuff you have to take with a grain of salt because it's going to have a really low sample size. So, for instance, what's something? Sometimes there's just like an outrageous item. So, for example, you see like Moonstone has a 52% win rate, right? You might be thinking, oh, well, Moonstone's... Or no, this is an even better one. Serpent's Fang, right, as first item, has an 81% win rate. So you might just look at that and say, oh my god, like, I've got to rush Serpent's Fang every game, but it's only picked 11 times, right? Versus, Kraken is now picked 119,000 times. So you do have to look at sample size. But if something is very popular and it has a really high win rate, there's something going on there. So just be humble. Just say, look, I don't get it. I don't understand it, but I want to understand it. So I'm going to go look it up. Because something's going on there. You just can't deny it when it's that popular and it has that high of a win rate. There's something happening there. So use that statistical reasoning. Examine the meta. Don't try to always be a meta breaker if you're trying to win. That's one thing that I really wanted to emphasize here is everybody has their pet champions and their pet items, and they want to say, oh, but there's this really hidden gem that nobody's thought about. People have thought about it before, I'll guarantee you. I know that's not the fun answer. Occasionally, like I said, I'd say like 80% of the meta is solved. There's 20% that's still up in the air and is kind of percolating, and there's always new champs being discovered. But just understand that it is very, very unlikely that on a consistent basis, any one person is going to find something that is going to have like wide sweeping mass appeal and be very strong. So there are champs that, or people on certain champs that can be very good. Yes, you can find a challenger who plays X obscure champion or X obscure build or whatever, but just know that that is really, really rare to see that, right? It's like there's always people that you hear about that dropped out of college and started a tech business in their garage, like Bill Gates, and now they're billionaires, right? But how many people tried to do that, right? Drop out of college and start their own, tech business and failed, right? Or at least weren't as successful as someone like Bill Gates, right? So you can look at the really rare outliers, and that's cool, but just understand that's not going to happen for the vast, vast majority of people. So you need to be putting most of your emphasis, if you're trying to win games, on perfecting the meta that's already there or tweaking it, like maybe slightly changing it, rather than completely going against it and doing something that seems really off meta. If you're committed to winning, if you just want to have fun, that's a completely different thing. That's not what this video is about. Okay, I do want to speed up though, because I do want to try to keep this under 30 minutes. I know I've talked about this point a lot. But yeah, try to improve your chances to win. And the last thing I'll mention here, of thinking of winning as a process, you need to embrace and understand the theory of solo queue equilibrium. I've talked about this a lot. So what does that mean? That means that you are playing in a champion pool at a certain elo where the rest of the people in that elo, on average, are going to go 50-50. They're going to be 50%. And so what that means is you are the difference maker, right? If you're playing at a higher elo, if you're silver right now and you think you deserve to be gold, you need to play much better than everyone else in silver, right? So it should look like they are doing worse than you, because if you're gold in your mind, you think you're a gold skill level and they're silver, they should be playing worse than you, right? That is normal. That is what should happen if you're climbing, is everyone else should look like they're from a lower level. Now, part of that is that sometimes we put too much emphasis on ourselves. We think we're a lot better than we are. But part of that is just sort of the nature of climbing too, is you can't play like a silver player if you're in silver and want to climb. You have to play like a gold player, right? So you have to understand that you are the difference in whether you climb. Now, there can be individual games that are pretty much unwinnable, right? Where somebody DCs really early, or somebody goes 0-20 or rages or sabotages the game or whatever. Yes, that's going to happen, sure. But over hundreds of games, if you play one game a day, over 365 games in a year, you are going to ultimately be the difference, because everyone else is going to be 50-50. But if you're truly outplaying your lane, and especially if you're taking over, hi Rory, especially if you're taking over the game, then it shouldn't be a 50-50 game. You should be hard dominating. Oh, it's full of energy, isn't it? Can you turn it on here? Daddy will turn it on for you. Okay, you want to play over there on the couch, then we'll go get a snack in a minute? Okay, here you go. Mommy will be back in a little bit. Okay, you want to play on the couch, or you can play in the playroom, and we'll play in just a little bit. Okay, so just keep that in mind, because this is the number one thing that I hear all the time. Oh, my teammates are bad, or oh, this person fed, or how do I win when I have 3 people on my team that are 0-20? It's like, the answer is you probably don't win that game, right? But you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to look at the process of improving and learning and trying to get better. Because the truth of the matter is, if you just take this down to a very fundamental, can't get more basic than this level, if you drop a challenger in iron, that challenger will not remain in iron, right? So if it was all about teammates, right? If it was all about my team this, my team that, there's no way I can win because my team's always bad, then challengers would not be able to make it out of iron, right? But they can. And some people are saying, but I'm not challenger. It's like, okay, but you don't have to be challenger, right? Like a challenger might get out of iron with a 95% win rate, right? You don't need that. All you need is like a 55% win rate. So you do not have to play like a challenger, but you have to understand that just logically, from a fundamental perspective, luck cannot exist, because if you drop specific players in specific brackets, there is predictive power to that, right? If it was luck, there would not be predictive power. Drop a challenger in iron, you can predict what's going to happen. That challenger is going to get out of iron. You drop an iron player in a challenger game, you can predict what's going to happen. That iron player is going to have a very, very low win rate, right? So because there is predictive power to it, then it's not going to be luck. Now, yes, there is still some statistics to it, but statistics and statistical reasoning is not the same as luck. Luck means that something does not have consistent predictive power to it. Just because a challenger player might lose a game, if they played 1,000 games in iron, they might lose a game. That doesn't mean that it's luck, because it's not 100%, right? And just like I just said, the iron player, if you dropped him in a challenger game, he might win a game, right? He might get carried by his team, for example. Just like the challenger player might be in a game and 3 of his teammates might be on the same computer network and get DC'd in a thunderstorm, and he might lose the game, right? So for individual games, yes, there can be a level of luck in it, right? But over time, when you let the statistics play out, it's not going to be luck. It's going to be a reflection of skill. But just keep in mind that that is going to be statistical. It's not 100%, because there are variables. Okay, so just keep in mind you are the difference. Solo queue is not random. If you play better than your teammates on a consistent basis, almost every game you're putting in the maximum effort and you're outperforming, you're going to climb. Okay. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is radical responsibility. Now, this is part of it, and this is related. Like, do not take excuses, because what excuses are when you're saying, oh, my team was bad, or oh, I had this 0-5 person, or oh, I had a bad matchup, or this or that. You are taking away opportunities for you to improve, right? You're blinding yourself by accepting a really simple answer to a complex problem, how to win. And that means you're not going to be looking. So if you say something like, oh, my top laner went 0-10, so there's no way I could win this game, then maybe you're not noticing, hey, I could have all-in at level 2. We hit level 2 first. We had a dominant bot lane. I could have all-in, but instead I just sat back in the bush and didn't do anything, right? That's a mistake. That's an opportunity you didn't take that you could have taken, right? So maybe your top laner, if you just completely leave him alone, goes 0-10, but if you go 10-0 bot lane from hardcore dominating bot lane, and you do it faster, maybe you can go top and stop your top laner when he's at 0-6 and stop him from feeding as much. And maybe you could be even more powerful and dominate even more than your top laner, right? And so just coming up with excuses just blinds you to the possibilities that you could be missing out on. So don't accept easy answers. Don't accept excuses. Even if you would have lost the game anyways, just think, okay, could I have gotten 10 more CS here? Could I have set up this objective better? Could we have taken dragons 2 minutes faster? Could we have intercepted them at Baron and potentially, picked them off, won a team fight, got the Baron? So here are some ways that you can take responsibility for things. So even if, realistically it is someone else's fault, if you have to put someone at fault, try your best to, get into a mental state where you're thinking, what could I have done differently, right? If they get ganked top lane, maybe you could have pinged, hey, mid laner's missing, right? So is that your fault that top laner's overextended and is not watching for mid lane and is not backing up when their mid laner goes out of vision? Technically, no, right? You might say, no, it's the top laner's fault for doing that. But you need to take responsibility for that. You need to say, no, I'm in the bot lane. I could have also been looking at the mid lane, and I could have expressed that the mid laner was missing. I could have seen that the top laner is overextended, and I could have made the ping to say, hey, back up, you're getting roamed on, right? So you have to move out of that, I've got my thing I'm supposed to be doing in the game, and as long as I'm doing my thing, if my allies screw up, it's their fault. No, your thing is everything, right? Your thing in a game, your responsibilities are winning the game. So you need to take responsibility for everything, right? If your Alistar is about to make a really bad engage, you could, if you want to kind of have the victim mentality, you could say, well, I couldn't do anything. My Alistar just started this fight, and our Irelia wasn't here. He's just an idiot. And then I got, baited into this fight, and we lost, and they got Baron. It's but a winning mentality is going to say, hey, I have a mini map also. I could have seen that Irelia is not here and that her teleport is down, and I could have pinged it. I could have pinged the Alistar back 3 times. I could have pinged the teleport. And, you know, maybe he doesn't engage. Now, I know people always come back and say, well, you know, my solo queue teammates, he would have done it anyways. No one ever listens to anything. It's like, yes, some people aren't going to listen. But I'll guarantee you, if you ping that Alistar in that situation, there is some non-zero number of times that that player is going to listen, right? If you say nothing, it's 0, right? So if you don't relay any information to your allies, then there's no way you can influence them into making the right decision. Versus if you ping them, even if it's just, hey, there's a 5% chance this person listens to me, well, that's, you know, 5% more than 0, right? And that stuff adds up. That's what I was talking about with thinking about percentages in terms of winning, right? Because if you're just constantly communicating stuff, even if that only leads to like 5% more wins, that's the difference between 50% and 55%. And that is the difference between climbing. If you get to 55%, you can climb. So that's what I'm talking about. You just need to take responsibility for everything. You know, just communicate all of the information and just don't have any excuses, right? Just say, yeah, I could have pinged that. I could have told them that. I didn't have to get baited into that. I could have stayed out of that fight. Or, yeah, I could have rotated and helped this person. I could have given them more vision. I could have done all these things to maybe help improve the situation. And then some of it also is just thinking back on yourself. Is your champion and your playstyle appropriate for winning in this meta, or even on an individual game-to-game basis? Did you make the right decisions, right? Did you roam to the right places? Did you get the correct items, right? Are you playing stuff that is just going to be really strong and effective in this meta? It's like, you know, you can play something like Teemo Jungle if you want to play Teemo Jungle, but it's very, you know, you have to understand you're putting your team at a disadvantage if you do that, most likely, because there are going to be better choices. Now, I know that's not always a fun topic that people want to, you know, think about, and I don't want to say, you know, I don't want to stomp on people's dreams and say, you know, you have to play the number 1 champion in every role. I don't think that's true. I think that you definitely can be good on stuff that's not like at the very top tier, but I would say that it definitely is going to lower your win rate if you're constantly picking stuff that is significantly lower in power level than the current meta champions, and if you're playing with a playstyle that is not conducive to your team winning. So it's up to you however you want to play the game, but I'm just telling you, statistically, for the vast majority of the population, it's going to be a problem. Can you find some, you know, Korean Teemo Jungle player who's got a 70% win rate? Probably, sure. But remember, you need to be thinking about what are, you know, most people going to succeed on, rather than just thinking that you're going to be able to emulate the success of one person who is a dramatic exception in a situation. So, and just reflect on it, right? If you do play Teemo and you have an 80% win rate over 100 games, okay, do it, right? But if you're playing Teemo Jungle and you've got a 40% win rate, and you're like, but there's this challenger Teemo that does it, so I should be able to do it. It's like, well, you're not, though, right? So just think about that. And just remember that you can dodge as well, right? If people are arguing in the lobby, or you have, you know, 3 different people that are auto-filled, not playing their main roles, or the first-timing champs, you can dodge. You don't have to play that game, right? So, you know, sometimes people come in and they say, oh, I had all these bad teammates and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, did you scout them in the lobby? Did you see, do they have experience on these champs? Did you think, are these meta champs? Does our composition work against the enemy composition? And I know people don't want to dodge. They're like, it's not fun to have to wait. It's not fun to dodge, you know, all this kind of stuff. It's like, true, but if you want to win, you're going to have to dodge some games. And that's just kind of the dirty secret of climbing a lot of times, is you have to dodge. Especially the higher and higher you go, the more likely it is you're going to have to dodge if stuff is just really out of alignment. And I know, like, as a streamer, sometimes streamers will just play stuff anyways, especially like challengers or masters, because they don't want to have to wait another 15-minute queue. And they'll just power through tough games because, or tough lobbies, because, you know, they're just doing it for the stream, right? Because people don't want to see dodges on stream. They don't want to wait, especially when it's really long queue times. And so they don't really emulate this that well. And it just doesn't look sexy, right? It feels cowardly just innately to people, oh, why don't you play the game? If you were really good, you could win that anyways. But that's not really the kind of mentality that you want to have. It's strictly statistical thinking. Bring your emotion out of it and just say, look, we have like a 30% chance to win this. Maybe we've got 4 auto-filled people playing off-meta champs, and they have, this prime-time team comp. And it's like, yeah, maybe sometimes you win that. Maybe they screw up. Of course, it can totally happen. But statistically, that is an option that's available, is a dodge, and you do have that. So just be aware of it and be sure to take advantage of that in really bad-looking situations, and you will help yourself climb. And just keep in mind also that games are not deterministic, right? So it's not a guarantee that your top laner would have gone 0-10 in every possible way that you could have played that game, right? Like I said earlier, you could have won harder and helped them out, for example. So just keep all that in mind, that there are things that you could do in game, even if it looks like everyone else is feeding. They didn't start the game 0-10. They started the game 0-0, right? So what could you have done to influence the outcome of the game? And then commitment to winning. Now, this is a big one as well. You need to understand that if you're trying to win games, you need to put winning above everything else, above your ego, your personal statistics, any kind of petty little rivalry you might have in the chat. If you're really committed to winning, you need to put all that aside and just try to win. Okay? Because the main thing that matters are letters, not numbers. This is what I always emphasize. What matters is getting the W. Okay? You don't want the L, you want the W, right? So everything else doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if you're 10-0 or if you're 0-10 or if you're up 100 CS on the enemy or they're up 100 CS on you. Whatever it takes to win the game is what it takes to win the game. So some games are not going to be pretty. Sometimes you might win games you don't deserve. Sometimes you might lose games where you did deserve to win, but you have to take the term deserve out of your vocabulary, right? Nobody deserves anything in League of Legends. It's all earned. You either win the game or you don't. It's binary. It's that simple. It's either W or L at the end of the day, and that's what you need to be thinking of. So what does that mean? Well, part of it is minimize your ego, right? Just ask yourself, does this help me have a higher percentage chance to win this game, right? So you might be thinking, okay, I have to have this hyper carry mentality. I have to play this like super high damage champion. I have to get all of the CS. I have to get all of the kills and last hit because my idiot teammates don't know what to do with a lead and all of that kind of stuff. And some of that sometimes might be true, but you have to ask, is this going to help me win? So for example, if you come in and you get a kill in the bot lane, and then you tax and take all of the CS out of the lane as a jungler, if that tilts your ADC, even just like statistically, if that makes sense for you, and I talk about that down here, you need sacrifice resources to keep the mental high on your team. Even if you do better, like if they're 0-5 and you are 5-0 and you're playing Master Yi, if you just take all of that CS right in front of them when they're clearly interested in getting that CS, if they don't tell you to do it and they start pinging, back, and you do it anyways, and they go AFK, you might lose the game, even though you're 5-0. Even though, yes, if everyone was completely emotional and disinterested and being rational, then maybe you should be the one getting that gold. If it tilts them out, if they see that as a personal affront, and lots of people have fragile little egos, and they go AFK, you lose, right? Or if your AD carry is 0-5 and you're Kha'Zix and you're 5-0 and they're pinging that red buff, right? Like they want to go for that red buff, and they're walking towards it, and you just smite it right in front of them so they can't get it, and then they go AFK, or they start sabotaging the game, right? They just go mindlessly split push a lane or go run it into the enemy team. You just lost that game. Right, so what's more important, getting a red buff or getting one wave of minions, or getting the win in the game, right? So you have to lay that down. You have to let that go. Say it can apply in reverse too, right? If you're feeding, if you're having a really bad game, let's say that even if you're something like an Anivia middle, and you're 0-5 and you keep dying, and let's say that your Evelyn is 5-0 and it's like third blue buff, and you really want that blue, and you're walking over towards it, and they take that blue, you just got to say, hey, I'm just going to keep playing, right? Like, I'm behind. I understand they don't trust me with this blue. I really would like the blue as Anivia, but That's just how it is, right? So even if they have a really bad, warped sort of sense of how the resources should be allocated and stuff like that, you just need to try to do the best you can to keep their mental high and just think, does this help me win? Is question marking someone who just died in a stupid way, is that going to actually help me win, or is that going to tilt them more, right? So I'm not a saint. I'm not perfect on this. I know nobody is. Sometimes we all get frustrated, and it's okay to be frustrated, but you need to be asking yourself, is this going to help me win the game? You need to always reflect back to that. Okay, this person's feeding. That was really stupid, but I'm not going to type. I'm not going to ping. That's it, because it's not going to help me win. Okay, and so make sure that winning is over pride, even if someone is spam pinging you, right? And you should mute the pings if they start doing that. These little passive-aggressive pings like question mark, oh my god, why were you there? Why were you doing this? You know, that type of stuff. You just have to mute it, right? And definitely mute chat, and then keep your focus on the big picture. Like, what should we be doing to win this game right now? Even if, you know, top lane's 0-10, mid lane's 0-10, okay, but how do we get back into the game? What's our opportunity, right? Do we have 3 dragons and maybe we can get Soul and get back into the game? Or can we get to Baron faster and maybe, you know, gank them at Baron or something like that, right? Give resources to power as much as possible and lose with grace. So this is something, not lose the game, but lose your role with grace. And I think this is something that a lot of people really have a hard time doing. People are going to have bad games, right? Even if you're playing really well, even if you're a 70% player, there might be some times where you just screw up early and get snowballed on. Or maybe you're just having an off day or an off game and you're not playing that well. You can still win games where you're 0-5. I know people want to just surrender and go next, but you can still win. Just keep the big picture in mind. Think about your teammates. Just say, all right, man, I really screwed up in bot lane. I'm 0-5 right now, but this Irelia is 6-0 top lane. So all I have to do is stop dying, just give up CS, give up whatever I have to give up, and just start playing in defense mode. Maybe I can get a more defensive item. Maybe I can do something to help the Irelia out. Whatever it is that can help your team out. You know, you just got to learn how to lose with grace. And part of that is playing champions that are effective when they're behind, that don't require a heavy snowball, right? So if you're playing something like Ashe ADC, then you've still got your arrow, right? Even if you're 0-5, you've got your arrow. Or if you're Misfortune, you have a lot of base damage. You have your ultimate, you're fast, so you can rotate, you get good back timings. You know, playing stuff like that might be better than playing something like Vayne, potentially, who doesn't have any utility, and it's very, very hard to win if you fall behind. But yeah, just think about that on a champion-to-champion basis, and then just think, okay, you know, if I am behind, and this Kha'Zix, you know, does come to my lane, gets the successful gank, and I'm 0-5 Ashe, and this Kha'Zix is 5-0, tell him to take the CS, right? Give him your CS. Like, let him snowball harder. You know, give this person vision, right? If your mid laner is just really balling, right? If they're a Zed and they're 5-0, get a control ward and put it somewhere around mid lane, right? Even if you're an ADC, get a control ward, go put it in a bush somewhere around mid lane and protect their lead, right? That will allow them to be more aggressive and sort of push their advantage. So that's something you can always do. Doesn't matter if you're 0-20. You can buy control wards, you can put them on the map, and you can play around your the people that are doing the best on your team. Right? Use your cooldowns to protect that person. So, for example, if you are playing Alistar or something like that, and you've got that 5-0 Zed, right? Like, maybe instead of just hard engaging every time or just trying to dive their backline, just protect the Zed or protect the Irelia or whoever's really strong. You know, make sure you're using those cooldowns to peel for them, to set up plays for them. Use your locket or whatever to try to protect them. Just do everything that you can to try to make sure that person's successful. And part of this as well, part of that mentality of losing with grace when you're ahead, because everybody talks about pushing your advantage or lose with grace when you're behind. Everybody talks about pushing your advantage when you're ahead, and that's all good. You know, learning how to like take objectives, get vision, lock people down. I talk about that in a lot of videos. But this huge one that nobody ever talks about is how to lose gracefully and still put yourself in a position to win when you're having a bad game. So part of that is knowing how to give up on certain objectives as well. So I've got Rift Kit here, and we're going over. We'll see if we can keep it under 45 minutes. But for example, right, if you're down here and let's say that you're 0-5 or whatever, and they are much, much stronger than you, and you see their jungler come down on this ward, and let's say that you have a ward in this bush, and they start walking over this ward, and you've got a wave that's just about to crash right here. It's like, what do you do? Right? Well, if you have the victim mentality, you're going to sit here and try to CS because you're going to be thinking, I'm really far behind and I need to get this CS. And then the jungler is going to wrap around and kill you. And then you're going to ping your jungler saying, hey, idiot, where are you? Help me. Right? That's the victim mentality. But if you're learning how to lose with grace, you know, you might say, all right, our jungler's top side of the map. We're really far behind. The correct play is to back up. Right? You see their jungler coming in. You know they're going to dive you in the bot lane. So you just get the flip out of there. Right? You just leave. And it sucks. It sucks to do that because they're going to take the tower or they're going to get free plates, or at the very least you're going to be missing a lot of CS. And that's just how it is. You know, maybe they take this, maybe they get dragon, but you didn't give them, you know, an extra kill or two, right? And that's the key, is you're just minimizing your losses. There's no way you can defend that tower. Should your jungler be bottom to try to help you out? Maybe, depending on the circumstance. But you just have to play around that. That's not the reality of the situation. That's not how it is. So you got to give it up, right? Or maybe, you know, you're over here, you're trying to set up for dragon. Let's say that you did a really good job over here, you know, setting up. You have your lanes pushed up, and the enemy's coming in. Let's say they're all rolling in. You got your vision set up. It's just absolutely perfect. But your AD carry, even though you pinged it a lot, is not on board. And they're over here, you know, trying to get this minion wave. Right? Even if the rest of your team is in a great position here, if, you know, there's no way that you're possibly going to be able to win this 4v5. Like, you know your ADC's over here. You know they don't have teleport. You know it's going to be a 4v5. If it's like the score is 2-2 in dragons, and this is going to be the third dragon, right? What do you do here in this situation where you see them all coming? Correct answer: give it up, back up, leave, give them dragon. Because like, it sucks. You had position, you had vision, you were ready to go, but the ADC wasn't with the program, right? They left. They're doing something random. Maybe they're over here doing red buff instead of being in position for this fight. You got to understand, hey, in an ideal world, should the AD carry be ready to be there? Could you have gotten the dragon, forced a fight, and maybe aced him? Sure. But you know what? That's not how it was. ADC was not there. So you have to learn how to lose with grace and just say, you know what? Our team screwed up on macro. We got to give them the dragon. That's it. And just move on to the next thing. And it sucks. I'm not happy about that when that kind of stuff happens in my games. And it's okay to not be happy about it. But, you know, just don't ping them. You just have to kind of try to minimize your emotion as much as possible and just say, hey, this is how it is. Leave, you know? And so learning how to lay down stuff like that, just if your team's not there, or maybe they can't fight for dragon, right? Maybe, and this one's even tougher sometimes, maybe your team is there. Maybe you do have the position, right? But you're down like 10 kills, and, you know, their top lane Irelia, who is 10-0, is wanting to fight here, and you have you know, some champion that doesn't have a lot of utility that's really far behind. You got like a Teemo or something who's like 0-10. Irelia's got 3 items. Teemo like doesn't even have 1 item completed yet. What do you do here? You might have to give it up. Your team just might be too weak to fight that fight. Or sometimes even if you're ahead, if they have a really good team fight comp and you just have a bunch of, you know, not good team fight type of champions, right? So if they have I don't know, something like Hecarim, Galio, Orianna, Malphite, you know, and just some other like crazy wombo combo team, and you're rolling up and you've got like Pantheon, Tryndamere, you know, just all of this stuff that's just like not that great at team fights. You might have to give it up because there's just no way, even if you're ahead like 2 kills, they're just, if they're on that power spike, right? If they're all around, you know, like level 6, they just got their mythics, you just might not be in a position. So you might have to ping your team back and say, look, there's no way we win 5v5s at this point. They're just way too strong. That's just not what we're good at. You might have to give it up. So just think about those kind of things, right? Just learn how to lose with grace. Not lose the game, but lose the battle and win the war, hopefully. Just say, hey, we can give up this dragon. It's not soul point. We can't fight right now, but if we have one or two more items, maybe that Trendemir is going to be able to out-split push the Malphite in the top lane, right? Once they both get 3 items, maybe he can win that, and we can play around that, right? Maybe if he kills Malphite in the top, then he can rotate down, and we can fight a 5v4 if he gets a good flank, and we can win, or something, right? So just give up stuff that's low percentage and look for better opportunities. Other couple of things here that I want to mention, and then we'll call it a day, because I do want to try to keep it under 45 if I can. Cultivate a minimal champion pool with meta champions, ideally. So you'll notice that a lot of top-end players do not consistently play much more than 3 champions, and many top-end players are going to be one-trick type of champions. Why is this? Watch my one-trick video. I explain it in a lot more depth, but the quick answer is that when you play a champion a lot, you know the matchup's much better, you know when you can be aggressive, you know when you should be defensive, and you should take those small losses, like I was just talking about, right? And you're just going to have, you know, just a much better grasp on the macro, because you're not focusing on what your champion does, you just intuitively know because you've played him so much, and your micro is going to be a lot better. You're going to know the animations, you're going to know how to, you know, maneuver around certain skill shots, you're going to understand certain power spikes when you're strong, when they're strong. There's a lot of champions in League of Legends, right? And unless you play a champion a lot, unless you've seen these matchups a lot, you may not know what to do, right? So you're playing, you know, Fiora versus Jax or something like that. You may not exactly know how to navigate that, or you're playing like Camille versus Renekton, or especially like some obscure matchups, right? Some stuff you may not see that much. Like, what do you do Camille versus Yorick, right? Like, when can you beat him or not? Like, you may not see that champion very much if you just play her every now and then. So, you know, being able to understand your matchups and how to win them takes time, it takes practice. And so, you know, locking down and just playing a handful of champs, that may not be as much, you know, fun if you like to try different stuff, but if you're committed to winning, then understanding that is going to be very important. And then study, right? Study one trick, study reliable meta guides. So I just talked about this up top, but just go and watch different one tricks, right? Watch some of their games. So if you use Lolalytics here, once again, not sponsored, wish I was, but it's just a good, useful site. You can actually see who are some of these top one tricks on these champions, right? It says right here, the center leaderboard. So you can just click on some of these different people and look at different people too. See if you can notice trends. So don't just follow one person, but look at like maybe the top 5, you know, set of players there, and just say, okay, what's common, right? What are they all doing? Which kinds of choices are they making? Okay, so maybe you say, all right, all of them are going Kraken right now, you can say, but some of them are going Rapid Fire, some of them are going Gensus. Why are they doing that in different situations? So just study the one tricks, try to, you know, ask questions, understand why they're doing what they're doing, and look at reliable meta guides. So I try to do that with my tier list. I try to give you good in-depth information. I try to be honest with you and not just pander to people and say, oh, just follow your heart, play whatever you want. You know, that's true to some extent, and that's fine, but that doesn't help people win, right? So try to follow that. Try to understand, okay, this champion's rising up in the meta. That's what's making this champion strong, right? So if you know, watch one of my guides and I explain like, ooh dear, okay, he's very strong because Phase Rush is very good right now because Dead Man's Plate and the new Righteous Glory, I'm blanking out on the item, the Kim Tank, there we go, is very strong right now. So you might understand, okay, well that's why people are picking it. So are there some champions that are in my champion pool that I can play that might be good against that type of thing, that could exploit those types of things? So just think about that. Understand the meta, understand what's strong, and just understand maybe you should be changing that. Oh, a great example that I just thought about, right, is that enchanters, especially with Moonstone, are very strong, and a big part of why that's becoming more popular, statistically it's good, but also LS, another analyst out there, is making a huge deal about Moonstone. He's tweeting about it all the time. He's just totally hyping this item up, Moonstone, Staff of Flowing Water. So if you're trying to next level meta, if you're thinking, okay, a lot of champions are going to be getting Moonstone right now in these games, and people are still going to be getting Gore Drinker, so maybe instead of Staff of Flowing Water second, the Kim Tank Putrefier, or the Kim Tech Putrefier just got a huge nerf. I'll watch the Strategy Professor's video on that. He's talking about how it's really strong. Maybe I'll get that second item instead of Staff of Flowing Water, at least in some situations. And that is something that, you know, you just wouldn't know if you weren't watching meta guides. If you didn't know that the Putrefier just got buffed and that it's much different, then you wouldn't know, okay, maybe I should be getting that instead of Staff of Flowing Water in at least some situations if I'm playing against like 2 heavy healing items like Gore Drinker plus Moonstone. Right, so just try to understand the meta, understand what's been shifting, what's really popular right now, and then just think, is there something I can do to adjust to improve my win percentages on that? And the last couple of things here, try not to grind. People talk about grinding, or you got to grind out all these games and stuff like that. I think there's a misperception about that, because League is really not about putting in a ton of games. I know that's, really common that a lot of people say, oh, well, I could be Challenger, but I've got a job, I've got a family, I've got some kids, I got to study, I got to pass my classes or whatever. So I could do it, but I just don't have time to put in 10,000 games. Let me let you in on a secret here, okay? Let's go here. Let's look at these leaderboards. Top of the Challenger, okay? How many games do these people play? Right? We've got less than 200 games so far. About 200 games. Less than 200. Less than 200. Less than 150. Right? Less than 100. Actually, slightly more than 100. 103. But yeah, you don't see anyone here with like 5,000 games, right? Like this person. 116 games. This person, 134 games. Right? This person, less than 100. This person is at, 99 games. 54% win rate. Right? Now, yes, a lot of this is because they had Challenger level, MMR at the start of the season. So yes, if you're Iron 4, you're not getting up here in 100 games, right? But my point is that you don't have to just play thousands and thousands of games to win. It's all about getting a high win percentage. That's how you climb. Because just think about it, right? If you play 100 games and you go 60% in those 100 games, if you play 100 high-quality games, you're in the right mental state, you're focused, you've got the winning mentality, you're going to win 20 more games than you lost. Right, you're going to be 60 and 40, and going plus 20 is probably going to give you 2 or 3 divisions, maybe more, right? But if depending on the elo is still kind of messed up right now, to be honest, but it's going to give you some gains, right? Going plus 20, going 60 and 40 is going to be gains. However, if you play 500 games and maybe half of those are just like rage queues, or you're really tired, or you're tilted, you're just not doing all these things to help cultivate a good mental, and you only go 50%, right? If you're 250 and 250, you didn't go anywhere, right? You're going to be at the exact same elo. So, I know that some popular streamers talk about grinding, and they talk about having to put in all these games. You hear about pros practicing for 12 hours a day and things like that. There is something to be said for that, but there's also something to be said for just playing really high quality games. It's not just hours. Like, practice and playing a lot of time is useful, but only if you're learning, only if you have the proper mental, only if you're cultivating a really high win percentage, right? Because you can go down at the YMCA and play for 10 hours a day, pickup games and stuff like that. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to the NBA, right? So people have this sort of false narrative, and it comes up into excuses, like I've mentioned before, typically, where people are like, oh, I can't play that much, I have a life, all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, you don't have to play that much to, climb, right? You just have to have high quality games. So just don't get caught up in that, right? Only play ranked if you have a really high chance, like if you think that you're playing 90% of your potential, right? So if you think that you're putting in good quality games, then play ranked. Don't play ranked if you're really stressed out. If you just lost the previous game, don't do it. Just take a break. Go take 5 minutes, watch some funny cat videos, go get something to eat, take a walk or whatever, just reset your mental. A good way to check this, and sometimes if you're a streamer, once again, this happens to me, it happens to other streamers, Tyler One, people like that. Sometimes you have to play, because people are not going to you can't just tell your stream, hey guys, hold on, I'm going to go chill for 15 minutes and then I'll be back, right? So if you're watching streamers, they can't model this very much for you, because they have to play. It's their job to play and to try to power through it. But if you're just playing on your own out there, you can take breaks. You don't have to play, right? You don't have all these people watching you and all this sort of financial and professional pressure on you to play games. So in many ways, you're in a much better position than streamers to climb, because you don't have to you can dodge games, right? You can take breaks. Like, you can do all of these things and play and cultivate a much higher win percentage than some of the streamers can because of just the nature of the job. But a good way to check this is if you're just constantly thinking about the last game, or if you're coming into the lobby thinking and your mentality is already everyone's terrible, you know, then that you need to like take a break and sort of reset your mental. If you just come in and you just already have negativity before anything has even happened in the game, that means that you're still a little tilted about last game. So you need to take a break, reset your mental, and come in with a positive or at least a neutral mentality. You know, try not to be tilted, try not to be stressed out, right? If you just failed some exams, or you just got fired from your job, or some girl just rejected you, or just something negative happened in your life, don't go play League immediately. League is not meant to be therapeutic. It's not meant to help you out. It's a very competitive, high-stress environment a lot of times if you're really trying to climb. So that's not good if you're already coming in with stress. Go do something else to help you chill and then play League. League is not 9 times out of 10 going to lift you up if you're already in bad spirits. Not to say it's a bad game or that there's all sorts of toxicity and negativity. It's just, it's competitive. That's what I think. And so it's in a place where you already need to have, you know, a sharp mental to be able to do well in it, right? And I would say in general, you know, just try to eat, try to get enough sleep. If you're running on 2 hours of sleep, or you haven't had anything to eat or drink, you know, you might be in a bad place because your body is a machine. If it doesn't have the right fuel, it's not going to be able to, you know, focus properly. Even your mind is, you know, in some ways a machine, at least partially, right? If it doesn't have enough nutrients or the right kinds of food or drink, if you're dehydrated, you're just not going to be able to think as well. And, you know, dodge, I'd say after 3 losses, I would just automatically take a break. If you get 3 in a row, just go do something else, because there's something going on there that's probably a mental block that you may not necessarily be thinking of. You might be distracted, because the thing is, the word tilt implies that you're really mad or upset about something. And this is something that's hard for me. I'm sure it's hard for a lot of people to get a grasp on, but you can be tilted and be perfectly calm, right? Tilt, really at its core, I think, is all about distraction. Are you distracted, right? Are you not focusing up and doing the things that you know you can do in games? So, and usually as a result of something bad happening, I'm always distracted. And that's another thing as a streamer too, is if you're interacting with the chat, you know, I'll hold long conversations with the chat. I'm trying to explain what I'm doing. All this stuff does take away from your mental. That's another advantage, that as just sort of a person playing the game that doesn't stream, you don't have to worry about as much, is you can just focus on the game. You don't have to, you know, put extra mental energy into other things. But, you know, if you're losing 3 times, Rory, let's take it down just a little bit, okay? You want to watch a show and then we'll go play in a minute? Okay, here you go. All right, we'll play in just a second, okay? But yeah, so keep that in mind, and then just dodge bad games. You know, like I said earlier, you don't have to play. If it looks like people are already arguing, saying, hey, I remember you, you suck, blah, 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 you just dodge. Yeah, it sucks. Maybe you shouldn't have to dodge. Maybe you feel entitled. Well, I shouldn't have to dodge. It's not my fault these people are arguing in lobby, or they're playing these like troll picks. It's like, okay, but remember, nobody's entitled to anything in League of Legends. It is what it is. You dodge. It's going to happen the other way around, right? You have to remember that everything is symmetrical, right? They're going to have people on their team that argue about stuff, right? Or that pick troll picks, or that, you know, just talk trash to each other in the lobby and all that stuff. And there will be a percentage of games where you play where no one on the enemy team dodges, and it's a free win, right? Where you have someone that's just sabotaging the enemy team. So if you just dodge those on your team, you dodge the sabotages on your team, you're not getting losses for that. But then eventually some percentage of the enemy teams will have that as well, and some of them are not going to dodge, and that will actually help you climb. So I know it's hard to sort of envision that, but if you're making good decisions about dodges, you're taking better dodges than the average person in your elo, you will win, because you will get free wins off of the enemy team for not dodging in those situations. So just keep in mind that everything is symmetrical, and the goal is not to always have what you're entitled to or always be the best, but it's to maneuver better than other people in your elo, to make better decisions than they do. And dodging is definitely a part of that equation. Okay, and the final thing, and we'll definitely keep it under 1 hour, is focus and execution. So see everything, ping everything that I mentioned before as part of radical responsibility. If you see anyone flash, anyone go MIA or rotate or use their cooldowns, their teleports, their ultimates, anything that you see, if you see the jungler on a ward somewhere, always ping it, always communicate as much information as possible. Will everyone listen? No. Will some people listen? Yes. Will it help you improve your win percentage? Yes. Okay? And always have a control word on the map at all times. Unless you are literally completing an item on your back, a big item, then you need to buy a control ward. You should get control wards over a fairy charm. Or if you could get one more dagger or something like that as part of your build, get a control ward instead. Okay, so if it's a big ticket item, yes, complete it if you have the exact amount of gold. But if it's just something small, right, get a control ward. It's more important than a dagger, I promise. Okay, just always have a control ward on your map, and right there, I will guarantee you your win rate will go up 2% just immediately, just because you have control wards on the map. They're really OP. I talk about it in my vision video, so go watch that. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. But it's the most OP item in the game is vision, and control wards are one of the best things. So just always have a control ward on the map. Don't think of it as a tax, like, oh, I have to pay this tax of buying 5 control wards per game. Think of it as an investment. I have the opportunity to buy these 5 control wards, and on those control wards, we got 4 extra kills, or we were able to pick somebody off and get a free Baron, or, you know, we were able to see the jungler coming in and avoid a gank. If they had killed us off of that gank, you know, they would have had a double kill plus the tower plus a dragon. I paid 75 gold and saved my team, you know, 1,500 gold off of that, right? So think about it as an investment, not a tax. Control word. That's really important. Ping MIA summoners, ping initiates. If you're an initiation champion, ping that, right? If you're going to go in as Alistar or Leona, ping it 3 or 4 times. Ping your ultimate, ping your W. Just let them know you're going to go. And that will help instead of just randomly going in as Alistar, right? Just let them know what your intention is. And if they don't want to do it and you ping it, they might tell you. They might say, whoa, hold on. Like, I don't have flash, or my mana's really low, or I don't have this cooldown, right? Maybe you want to go in as Alistar, but your Aphelios doesn't have their Q off cooldown yet. Maybe it's 3 seconds, and they might ping it, right? And then you're like, oh, I wasn't tracking your Q cooldown. I guess I'll wait 3 seconds. Okay, be proactive, prepare key objectives, right? So get there early. Don't just roll up to Baron right when it spawns. You need to be there, you know, 30 seconds to 1 minute early, you know, getting vision all over the place, clearing out the enemy vision, getting key positions. So get there early, set up the vision, be ready to go. That means taking your back, right? So if Dragon's up in 1 minute, you may not have time to clear out those Raptors and then back. You might have to drop what you're doing immediately and back. It just depends. You know, if clearing those Raptors is going to get you like that one extra item that you need for the dragon fight, you might have to clear the Raptors and just tell your team stall. Don't fight, but try to just delay them. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but sometimes you have to drop what you're doing. You have to say, hey, if I killed Gromp right now, then I could complete whatever, my 3rd item, but Dragon Soul is showing up, you know, in 1 minute, so I got to back and I can't complete that item. And that's just how it is. You know, so you got to prioritize the team over yourself, as I keep saying over and over again. You know, and take every advantage that you can. Every auto attack in lane matters. Every ability you can do matters. And threat level. I talk about this a lot in the laning video, so be sure to watch some of the other guides. But, you know, if you're in a strong position, you need to show threat, right? If you are powerful, if you hit level 2 first, you need to be walking up as Alistar or Leona and push them off of that wave. Zone them out, make them miss CS, right? So you need to understand different threat levels, and you need to flex on them. If you're strong, right, you need to get up there in front of that wave and pressure them. So make sure that you're using your threat. Make sure that you are forcing them to respect your threat level if you're in a position of power. And just the final thing that I'll mention is just remember, like I talked about earlier, symmetrically, everything comes around and goes around, right? So your allies are going to feed. It's going to happen in games. The enemy is also going to feed. It's just our mind, we're mentally going to remember our 0-10 top, and we're not going to remember their 0-10 top. We're just going to get the win in that game and move about in our lives. But when we get an 0-10 on our team, we feel like it's super unfair and it never happens, when the reality is It's all going to be symmetrical. How are you going to play around that power? And the final thing that I'll mention is just, especially as you go up in elos, but really at all elos, you don't want to burn bridges, right? This is why you don't ping. This is why you don't talk and all that stuff, because you're going to see these people again. And if you talk trash to someone in a game who's 0-10 and they're on your team again, they might just run it down and you're going to get more losses just because you said something. Versus if you didn't say anything and they just had a bad game, they went 0-10, the next game you have them, they go 5-0, maybe they could have won instead of sabotaging you if you didn't say anything. Anyways, that's going to be it. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.